Hi there, my name's Owen, and I'd like to take a moment before we start this documentary to introduce the team behind the project. We've got Jackson.
Hi.
Ryan.
Hey.
Liam.
Hey.
And Atthiyah.
Hi.
Over the last semester of our project management degree, we've been planning and creating a documentary centered around food waste here in Victoria. We thoroughly hope you enjoy the documentary and walk away feeling inspired to combat food waste with us.
Throughout the filming of this documentary, COVID restrictions limited our ability to meet in person and execute parts of the project. However, in the rare occasions we did get to catch up, all COVID guidelines such as masks and social distancing were adhered to.
Although filmmaking is not a medium we were familiar with, we felt the documentary was a creative way to spread awareness on the issue of food waste in Victoria.
We have set up a quick survey about food waste that we would be super grateful if you can take a few moments to do after the screening. You can fill it out by heading to the survey link in the description box below.
We had the opportunity to interview some brilliant guests and are grateful for their contribution to our work. But in the interest of time, we had to cut these interviews short. But they were all inspiring and we encourage you to view them in their entirety on our YouTube channel. On behalf of Owen, Atthiyah, Liam, Jackson and myself, thank you for joining us and we hope you enjoy the Uneaten Truth.
Humans' reliance on food traces back to a time before we even had words for food waste. A time when every piece of food gathered or hunted down meant the survival of your family for another day. Wasting food was not an option. Slowly, this hunter-gatherer society changed. Early humans transitioned into the birth of farming and agriculture, the result of which gave us access to a supply of food that was more reliable and consistent than our hunter-gatherer ancestors could ever have dreamt of. As we continued to domesticate plants and animals alike, our proficiency in agricultural practices grew and grew. In order to feed a growing population, global food production increased, and modern farming practices gave way to the mass overproduction of food for those with access to it. This expansion of agriculture has created a surplus of food that enables large populations to easily access any desired meal or cuisine they want through supermarkets, wholesalers, and restaurants. This abundance of products has slowly given rise to wasteful habits of overbuying, wanting aesthetically perfect fruit and vegetables, and allowing food to simply go off when not consumed. Considering the important role that food plays in the survival of our communities around the world, we as a species tend to waste an awful lot of what we need. Not only does food waste eat up valuable resources like energy, water, and money during the farming, storage, and distribution of our food supply, it also contributes significantly to climate change when left to decompose in landfill. While our mastery of food production has given us a major survival advantage as a species, it may prove to be our undoing. This is the Uneaten Truth.
We've all done it, right? That tomato was looking a little sad. You spotted some mold on your loaf of bread. So you threw it in the bin. Easy, right? Out of sight, out of mind. And you can always buy more. But it's not that simple. Food waste here in Victoria is a massive issue, and we don't think enough is being said about it. Take, for example, a few of these statistics from Sustainability Victoria. Each year, Victorian households are responsible for the waste of 2.4 million tonnes of food. That's a lot of food waste. In fact, it's enough to fill the Eureka Tower every single year, top to bottom, full of food waste. If it helps you visualize how heavy this food waste is, it's the same weight as roughly 12,000 Boeing 747 jumbo jets. That's a lot of food waste. The scary part is, 2/3 of this food waste that's going to landfill, it could have been eaten. It's not even food waste. That's a lot of food being wasted. Remember, 2.4 million tons every single year. In fact, in order to feed each person in Victoria, it costs 207 kilos of food waste. This fact alone makes each of us responsible for this pressing issue. What brings us together as Victorians against this issue, however, is that Victoria as a state is responsible for 1/4 of Australia's entire food waste. Okay, so the landscape surrounding food waste is pretty grim, and these statistics are super daunting. How can we change things? What can we as Victorians do to combat food waste? My group and I were pretty worried when we saw all these statistics, so we decided to set about producing this documentary to help raise awareness about food waste. We sat down with industry experts and research professionals. We had a chat to representatives from organisations combating food waste, such as OzHarvest. All of this led us to come up with a couple of strategies and some tips that you can implement in your day-to-day life to help combat food waste. Here's a little animation that'll show you the cost of food waste on our economy and the climate. Let's start by talking about why it's so important that we fight food waste. Why is food waste such a big issue? Well, to unpack the issue, we need to take a look into where all this waste is ending up. What damage is it having on the climate and our economy? The truth is that when throwing away uneaten or unwanted food, it's not just the item itself that is being wasted, but all the resources involved in producing it. The process of providing food for the population is a multifaceted operation, and even disposing a simple piece of fruit or vegetable will waste energy, water, land, transportation, and contributes to the pollution of our environment. First up, a concern we are all well and truly aware of: climate change. Thanks to a report from Sustainability Victoria, we know that the food we're wasting here in Victoria ends up producing 3.15 million tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent. That's the same as 1 million cars, 1/4 of the cars on Victorian roads. That's pretty scary, and unfortunately, it doesn't stop there. Let's take a look at the water costs. Each year, the disposal of Victoria's food waste requires 29 billion litres of water. That's the equivalent of filling and emptying 11,600 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Or, it's 8% of all residential water use in Victoria, coming from the disposal of food waste. So clearly food waste is no friend of the environment, but it's no friend to our state wallet either. In fact, looking at the same report from Sustainability Victoria, food waste is costing Victoria roughly $6.3 billion a year, which breaks down to $985 per person. But if you don't live alone, how much is this costing the average household? A report from CanStar Blue found that on average, Victorian households throw away $2,136 in food waste each year. That's $42 a week in food waste. We may as well be throwing $42 in the bin every week. If we break this down further, the average Victorian household of 2 spends $142 on groceries every week. So if we're wasting $42 a week and spending $142, we're essentially throwing away just under a third of our weekly groceries.
So let's take a look at the life cycle of food waste. How do we get from here at the farm
To here,
or here.
We had the chance to sit down and talk to Bernardo Tobias from OzHarvest. After growing increasingly worried with the way that uneaten food was being handled in the hospitality industry, Bernardo decided to take action. After committing himself fully to the fight against food waste, Bernardo found himself transitioning from working in hospitality to being a delivery driver for OzHarvest, to then becoming the state manager in Victoria and South Australia. Bernardo's passion is incredibly inspiring, and his outlook on food is something we can all aspire to. Let's see what he had to say.
Food is everything, man. Food is everything. Food is dignity. Food is a basic human right. Food is the fuel that fuels our bodies and keeps us going. Food
Absolutely.
is so important. It's so important. It gets us together. It gets us in the room. You know, like in every human celebration, every human event, every human interaction involves food. The sentence or the action of breaking bread and getting together, it literally makes us human. A third of all food produced is wasted.
That's one of the more shocking facts.
You're wasting everything. You're wasting resources. You're wasting the time and the love and the water and the soil and everything. So food production uses about 71% of our fresh water supply in the world. So seeing that we waste about a third of all food produced, that just means that we are wasting more than 1 in 5 liters of precious, finite fresh water resources that we have. So every 5 liters that we have, and in Australia, we have a water crisis here. In Australia, we waste about 7.6 million tons of food every year. So just
7.6 million.
7.6 million. And there's 3 sides of this, okay? So there is the environmental issue.
Yeah.
So this is what we're talking about, like it uses 71% of our fresh water supply to grow it. If we're wasting a third of it, it's 1 in 5 liters of water being wasted. Food production in terms of land, like the food that we waste is responsible for 18% of the Earth's surface. So, and when you grow it and when you farm it, you're basically releasing a lot of carbon from the soil as well. So you're working on that soil, releasing a lot of that carbon from that soil. And that's just on food production. So when it comes down to the disposal of our food waste, like people just think that we throw the stuff in the bin and then it just disappears, right? We throw it in the wheelie bins and it disappears. No,
it's not a problem anymore.
Somewhere. Yeah, exactly, yeah. Right? And then your bin is empty. Magic. That's gone, disappeared. Yeah. So whilst there are councils in Australia that are starting to offer solutions for food and organics recycling, which is something that we support,
yeah,
the vast majority of our food waste ends up still in 2021, it still ends up in landfill. Food waste is responsible for 10% of all global greenhouse gases emissions, okay? 10%. So let's put into perspective. Extracting oil, which is horrible for the environment, is responsible for 3.8%. Producing plastic is responsible for 3.8%. Flying, so the entire aviation industry, 1.9%. Food is 10%. So put that into perspective. It's 3 times, almost 3 times worse than extracting oil.
Oh my God. Wow. That's
Yeah. And look, and this is from an environmental perspective. We could talk here all day about the environmental perspective, the environmental
it sounds like
impact
it.
of waste.
Yeah.
But from an economic perspective, food waste in Australia, just in Australia, it costs over $36 billion a year. Perspective, which is the third biggest impact that makes food waste such an issue. Pre-COVID, and this has been exacerbated significantly with the pandemic, but pre-COVID, 6 million Australians out of 25 million that we have in the country, 6 million needed to access food relief each year for not being able to afford or access food, when in fact we produce enough food to feed everyone.
6 million.
6 million. 1 in 5 children in Australia go to bed or go to school hungry. I believe that food is a human right, but with every right comes a responsibility. Okay, so this is a very important factor.
Okay.
We have the right for food. We have the right for food.
Yes.
But we have the responsibility to reestablish the value and the respect for food. You know, everybody that is watching this documentary now, I can guarantee you, had someone come to them at some stage in their lives and say, don't waste that because someone's going hungry.
All the time.
Everybody, man, if it's a parent or if it's a grandparent or if it's an uncle or someone has said, don't waste that, man. Like, come on, don't waste that. Someone's going hungry. You know what I mean? Like, someone really needs that food and you're throwing that out. Someone would have told every single person who is watching this documentary, food is the fuel for our bodies and it must be treated with more respect. That's the only way that we can overcome this.
It is 100%.
Storing food correctly, having the containers like those airtight sealed containers, that will save you a huge amount of money. Using a fridge, people think of the fridge as as just a cold box in your thing, but if you actually use the compartments in the fridge as they are meant to be used, you will be actually saving your food for much longer. You know, using a freezer, for example, as a pause button. You know, if meat is getting up to the to its use by date, just put it in the freezer. It's like pressing a pause button on decomposition of the meat, and the meat will last.
I like that. Yeah, it's a pause button.
It's a pause button.
I really like that. Yeah.
Bacteria won't be actually proliferating inside that meat, and that's the thing. And cook what you have. So look in your fridge and know what you need to use up first, and understand your food and communicate to the food. Food shows it when it's going off. You know, it starts showing us, and it really tells us, like, eat me now.
You being the manager of operations for Victoria and South Australia, I'd love for you to share what your strategy is going to be in making Victoria a better state for food waste. What's OzHarvest doing out there on the ground?
March 2020 and the 31st of August 2021, we rescued 1,924,905 kilos of good, nutritious surplus food. So close to 2 million kilos of food that was going to waste from 473 Victorian food businesses. And we deliver that food directly to 181 Victorian charitable agencies. So
that's quite impressive.
In addition to that, between the 1st of March and the 1st of March 2020 and the 31st of August 2021, OzHarvest purchased, so for the first time in 17 years, we had to purchase food. we purchased and delivered over 1 million kilos. So in addition to those 2 million, another a million kilos, 1,200,000 kilos was purchased and distributed through food relief programs. From a food waste perspective, we are working closely with Sustainability Victoria, supporting their Path to Half efforts as part of their Circular Economy Business Innovation Centre. And Sustainability Victoria, they recognise that in order for us to reach our national target of halving food waste by 2030, the solutions must include increasing food rescue capacity tenfold in our state. So currently we rescue, this is the whole sector, including OzHarvest, we rescue about 6,000 tons of food. And by 2030, so Sustainability Victoria wants to increase that to 60,000, something that we something that we really support. So there's many ways that people can get involved with us. It's not necessarily just money, man. Like, money is important, it keeps us going, but we understand that times are tough as well, especially university students and international students, and times are tough. So we understand, of course, it is important, but there are many ways that people can basically roll up their sleeves and become food fighters.
Awesome.
Starting from their homes. Stop wasting food at home. That's number one. Second, you can jump on our website. So it's www.ozharvest.org, or send us an email to our team here in Melbourne on melbourne.info@ozharvest.org, and we'll talk. The challenges that we're facing are enormous, and we need all the support that we can get, being that financial, or being that people that want to volunteer or share some skills that they have, or if people think, I know how to do this, and I think this could be really, really helpful. Just get involved. We are an ever-growing yellow family, and we basically welcome everybody here, and anyone and everyone that wants to fight the good fight, please join us.
Exciting. I'm really excited to share this with everyone, and for the people watching to actually see this and hopefully take on this approach towards being a food activist, we could almost call ourselves.
It's food fighters.
It's really inspiring.
We call them food fighters,
food fighters.
Our CEO, she's being dubbed as the food fighter in Australia. So we are all food fighters.
I like it. We're all food fighters. Hopefully after this documentary, we've got more food fighters out there in Australia and Victoria specifically. So after hearing from Bernardo, you're no doubt pretty excited to become a food fighter yourself. That's great. And let's keep the momentum going with some comments from Annika Stott, OzHarvest's Sustainability Manager. Annika explained to us what OzHarvest are doing with their most recent campaign, Use It Up.
Is how do we actually prevent food waste happening in the first place? So really focusing on prevention, looking at behavioural change in households. What are the key sort of motivations for households to reduce food waste, and working in an advocacy way to drive change at a federal level around the issue of food waste. So we sit on a number of steering committees, including the National Food Waste Steering Committee and the Fight Food Waste CRC, and that's really looking at what are the big things that need to be changed in Australia to reduce food waste, and how do we bring together businesses and industry, state governments, local governments, all to collectively work towards our national target of halving food waste by 2030.
Right. So definitely a massive goal, considering that at the making of this documentary, there's 8.5 years until 2030, and we want to halve food waste by then. But at the same time, it's very exciting because there is a lot that we can do, and there's a lot that OzHarvest are doing, which we'll get into. But
right, we know that 2.5 million tonnes of food is wasted in Australian homes. OzHarvest is doing an amazing job tackling food from retailers and looking at further up the supply chain, rescuing that good quality food. But we can't collect food that's being wasted in homes. So we thought, right, what we need to do is do a national campaign to make not wasting food a social norm, essentially. And we started to look at all of the different behaviours that can reduce household food waste. And we thought, gee, there's a lot of behaviours, there's a lot of different things that a household can do to reduce food waste. We know from having pretty strong marketing and communications at OzHarvest is that we actually need to be able to tell people what is the one thing they need to do. How can we keep this really simple and really easy so that everybody can embrace it and everybody can get on board? So we did some research with BehaviourWorks Australia to really understand what are the most impactful behaviours to reduce household food waste. And so we developed a long list of 36 different behaviours, and then we worked with some experts to understand what are the most impactful behaviours, so reducing food waste from a tonnage perspective. And then we overlaid that with a survey to 1,600 Australian households and said, right, out of these behaviours, what ones will you actually do? There's no point us designing a campaign for a behaviour that Australians won't do or aren't interested in doing. And so we knew that we wanted to develop a campaign. We knew that we wanted it to be meaningful, impactful, and actually drive behavioural change. And so what came out of this research was two really strong behaviours. And one was creating a use it up shelf, which is space in your fridge, freezer, or pantry where you put food that needs using up. And then the other behaviour was creating, or once a week, cooking a weekly use it up meal. And we thought, bloody perfect. Use it up speaks to everything OzHarvest. It's all about the value of food. It's all about giving people skills and confidence and just getting in the kitchen and just cooking with what they have. You know, you don't need to go out and buy new things for a recipe or, you know, cook like a chef. You just got to have the confidence to get in the kitchen and whip something up. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, it will be pretty delicious. But so last week on International Food Loss and Waste Day, we launched the Use It Up campaign. And part of that is the launch of the Use It Up tape. So this is a really cute little tape, and it's got instructions on the back. And
does that say cook me on the on the side of it?
It says use me, cook me. The tape says cook me. The tape says lots of different things in it. Actually, I'll get you a roll and show you. But what you do with this tape is you mark out an area in your fridge, freezer, or pantry to put food that needs using up, or you can cut the tape up and stick it directly onto food items or containers in the fridge. Removable, it's reusable, and it's recyclable. So it's a paper-based tape, and it's got little sort of visual reminders like eat me, pick me. We tried to make it really, really fun and really creative.
Oh, it looks cool. I like it.
And so, it's really good because what we've done some ethnographic research, so research with 16 households across Australia to really understand how the tape works in different types of households. And what we learned is that it's a really powerful visual communication tool. So households, instead of saying, oh, what's to eat, or there's no food, you're able to look in the fridge and see what needs using up. And it's a smack bang yellow and black sticker right in front of your face that is on, you know, Tupperware container, or it could be on a half open, you know, an open yogurt or a half open milk, just so everyone knows what needs using up before they open another one, or before they, you know, choose something else to eat. And then it is also a daily reminder. So that's the biggest thing about household food waste, is there's no set and forget. It's not something that you know, like, I don't know, your energy bill, where you can make some big tweaks that you then set and forget, and they're done for, you know, a couple of months. Food waste is something that you need to do every single day. or, tackling food waste is something that you need to do. So this tape, because it is a daily behavioural reminder, you are consciously and mindfully making a decision to reduce food waste in your home every single day. And that's how we're actually going to take a bite out of the 2.5 million tonnes that's wasted from our homes.
All right, that's pretty exciting and a fun and cool way for people to get involved with fighting food waste. And I like that, take a bite out of the tonnage that's being wasted. So how can people get their hands on this tape?
Yeah, great question. So it is free. So just visit the OzHarvest website and you'll be able to order your own tape, a free roll of Use It Up tape. And of course, there's always going to be inedible food waste. But hopefully that is only the scraps, the peels, the bones, the things that really, really can't do anything with. And for those, getting a compost bin or a worm farm or chickens is a really, really good solution of getting food waste out of landfill and getting those nutrients back into our soil. And so I bet you didn't know this, but guess how long it takes for a head of lettuce to decompose in landfill?
Oh, I don't know this, and I want to take a guess. I feel like it's going to be something scary. 5 years, I'm going to go with.
5 years, add another 20 years to that. It takes
25 years for a head of lettuce.
25 years for a head of lettuce to decompose in landfill. And landfills are so ineffective. There's no air, there's no good microbes, nothing breaks down. So it basically just sits there and mummifies. So a lot of people think, oh, it's okay, I'll just chuck this in the bin. It'll go and break down into soil in landfill. No, it absolutely doesn't.
All right. So no doubt you're still feeling pretty motivated to get stuck into fighting food waste after hearing from both Annika and Bernardo talk about the damage that food waste is having on our world and how OzHarvest is leading the charge to combat it. It's really fantastic that there's organizations out there doing such important work. But what about us, the consumers, the individuals? What can we do? How can we get involved? How can we be food fighters? Our next guest, Mark Boulet, is a research fellow with BehaviourWorks and has researched extensively into why we waste food and what behaviors we can change to reduce the food waste in our own homes.
At a global level, 1.3 billion tons of food is lost or wasted every year. That's from the farmer all the way through to the householder. Yeah, so across the entire food system.
Yeah.
In Australia, it's about 7.6 million tons that we waste overall. But both in Australia as well as in the majority of countries for which there is good data, the consumption phase, so that's food waste from restaurants, supermarkets, other food services and households is the largest, one of the largest proportions of that food waste. And households in particular make up a significant amount of the food that we waste. So it's an area that, is worthy of, I guess, attention, just because of the sheer amount of food waste that emerges from it.
Right, absolutely. And this is a massive question, but if you could pin it down to one thing, what exactly is driving the food waste within the household?
It is a massive question.
Yeah, I understand it might be hard.
You should never ask a researcher what's the one thing. I'm going to give you at least 36 things. Look, it's one of those tricky things. So we do know that household food waste has a significant behavioral component to it, right? So it's how we shop, it's how we cook, it's how we eat, it's how we plan for shopping. Those behaviors do have, result in food being wasted or not, right? But there are other things that are out of our control when it comes to household food waste, right? So, if the supermarkets only offer, 1 kilo packets of lettuce and you're a one-person household, food waste is going to be locked in for you regardless of what you do, right? So there are some underlying contextual variables which are a bit out of our control, which lead to food waste. And then there are other things, you know, like say the type of food. So fresh vegetables and fruits tend to rot and spoil a lot more quickly than say a can of beans. So again, based on what we buy, there's some things that are going to then result in food being wasted. So I certainly don't focus on households and behavior saying that that is the only thing that results in food waste. I'm very conscious of there are other contextual things that lead to food being wasted in the household. I'm interested, I guess, in behavior because there's a lot of us, right? And food waste, we engage with food in a really habituated and unthinking manner, which tends to mean that we buy more than we need, we cook more than we need, and we don't use leftovers as well as we should be. So, I mean, we engage with food every day, okay? And things that we tend to do every day at home tend to become habits really quickly, yeah? So, you know, think about when do you last remember, you know, when you brushed your teeth, or when did you last remember, you know, drinking a glass of water or having a coffee first thing in the morning? You know, those behaviors, we do them so frequently, right, that we don't even think about them. And it's the same with food related behaviors. We tend to shop in the same places, we walk the aisles in the same pattern, we grab the same food, we grab the same amounts of the same particular products, we cook the same meals, right? So there's a lot of unthinking stuff that comes from behavior. I think that there is something there about drawing more, I guess, deliberate awareness and attention to the way that we behave around food. But I don't fool myself in thinking that we have the bandwidth as humans to pay conscious attention to every single action to do with food every day. What I'm interested, I guess, is breaking bad behaviors and breaking bad habits around food and forming good habits around food that lead to less food being wasted.
Okay, so you're looking to, correct me if I'm wrong, of course, but you're looking to change those current habits that we don't even think about surrounding food into good habits, which we still don't think about, but are far more beneficial to fighting food waste and reducing our food waste.
Exactly. And I guess there's a bit of confusion often between behavior and habit, right? So behavior is an action that you can see somebody doing, and a habit, right, is a behavior that we do unthinkingly in a really stable environment. Okay, so some behaviors are habitual, other behaviors are not. Essentially, there's three main steps that we talk about when it comes to changing behavior, right? The first one is to actually identify what is the behavior that you want people to do. Yeah, because we often know that we want people to waste less food, but wasting food is not a behavior. Right? Wasting food is an outcome of a whole bunch of behaviors that we engage with, right? Yeah. All the way back into the supermarket, right? So the act of disposing food into a bin, right? That's kind of the final step of a long chain of things that we do that have brought us to that space. So it's how we shop, it's how we cook and how we eat that lead to food being wasted. So the first thing that we did with OzHarvest is actually identify what are all the different things that people can do to reduce food waste. And we ran a number of shops with experts, and we also surveyed experts to identify a list of 36 different behaviors that consumers can do that will reduce food waste or household food waste. But those behaviors cut across, I guess, 4 or 5 different categories. 1 is how we plan for shopping. 2 is how we shop. 3 is how we store food. 4 is how we cook food. And 5 is how we eat food, right? All those kind of broad practices have got very specific behaviors that sit underneath them. So that was the first thing that we did, is identify what can we actually do, rather than just vaguely talk to people about, hey, you need to reduce food waste. But often people don't quite know what they need to do,
But of those 5 categories, where did you see the most, I guess, accessible change to behaviors that people, where would you start?
That's really the next step, I guess, of taking a behavioral approach to a particular problem like food waste, because it's all very well to identify what people can do, but you do want to kind of go to the ones that you know are going to have potentially the greatest impact.
Absolutely.
That not many people are doing, right? And also that ones that are pretty easy to take up, because the easier they are to take up, the more people then hopefully will actually engage with them. So we did some prioritization of behaviors based on their impact. how easy they are, and also how many people are currently doing them. And we identified 3 based on relatively high impact, but also ones that not many people were doing, right? And the first of those was once a week that you make a meal that combines any food that needs using up in your house, right? And that's both leftover meals as well as, say, leftover ingredients. So, you know, the last couple of bits of carrots, the onion that you've got, you know, the little bit of yogurt you've got left over. A meal that tries to combine as many of those ingredients as possible that need using up before you go shopping, and then buy those ingredients again, right? So that's the first one. The second behavior was, and it really was to support the first behavior, is in your pantry or in your fridge, have a shelf that is for those items that need to be used up. Because often in our pantries, in our fridges, leftovers and leftover ingredients tend to get pushed to the back, or to the bottom of the crisper, right? And then 3 months later, we kind of lift up all this stuff and there's this nice little sludge at the bottom. So what we're saying is, well, actually have in your pantry or in your fridge a little section where you move those items so that they're front of mind for you, right? So the next time you open the fridge, you go, oh yeah, I've got those carrots I need using up, or I've got, you know, that half a jar of whatever that still needs using up, pasta sauce. Right? And the third behavior, so those 2 behaviors are related, first 2, around use it up, right? And they really form the basis of the OzHarvest Use It Up campaign that came out of this research. The third behavior is more about the amount of food that we cook. So as I said to you, often we tend to just cook by habit, and the amounts we cook are by habit as well, right? We've always cooked for 4 people. So every meal we cook for 4 people, regardless of how many people are actually going to be in the home. So the behavior that we suggested is, before you cook a meal, check who's home, and then cook to the people that you know are going to eat, rather than just cook the normal amounts that you normally do. Because we all like to think that we will use leftovers, but the reality is we don't, right? They become pushed to the back of the fridge. So it is much more impactful to cook to who's home rather than just to cook normal amounts and have leftovers. All are really aware, very sensitive to the economic, moral, social, and environmental implications of food waste, right? We know that happens, and we know it's a bad thing. What we don't know is how much food we actually waste. Right? A lot of people think that they waste a lot less than they actually do. Right? And that's one of the reasons for that is food waste in a typical week tends to happen. It's like a death by 1,000 cuts. It's a little bit here, a little bit there. You know, there's a half a plate of you know, mashed potatoes and vegetables. Right, I'll just scrape that into the compost bin. Right, it's small amounts, but they accumulate over the year. Over the year. That's right. So we're thinking about a particular issue that a bit here and a bit there starts to accumulate into a really large problem, right? 2.5 million tons for Australian householders, and that is literally massive. A bit here and a bit there. Exactly right.
And it's across millions of households as
well.
That's
the other thing too.
It's not just you who's scraping that potato into the bin.
Exactly right. So we don't. We don't really know the scale of the problem, and we don't really know, or aren't as, we think we do a lot better than we actually do. That's the thing. The other point is this habituated nature of food, right? That we just are so automatic when it comes to shopping and cooking and eating. We don't often stop to challenge the way that we're doing it. So it's you know, there's so many other, you know, healthy diets and, you know, alcohol and all these sort of things that they've become such habits that we don't even think about them. And it's a matter of shifting some of those. And I guess one of the third sort of underlying issues, which we can't do much about, is that food is quite cheap generally. So, you know, it doesn't hurt us when we waste it, right? It's interesting, we don't tend to waste meat. Right. And one of the reasons we don't tend to waste meat is because it's much more expensive than fruit and vegetables are, or say cereals and other products are. So high quality food items we don't tend to waste. Yeah, exactly. So that's an underlying issue, I guess, which and I guess the fourth one is, for a lot of us, we know we shouldn't do it, but we don't really have much of a sense as to what we can do to stop it.
are there any initiatives or strategies in play that are trying to get people to realize how much food they're wasting?
Yeah, and look, one of the 36 behaviors that we identified with OzHarvest is actually for people to do a waste audit of themselves, of their households, and to set some goals based on that, right? The reason we didn't put it up at the top 3 behaviors was for the way that you reacted when I said waste audit, right? There's an ickiness factor there.
There is, absolutely.
There's also a bit of a, oh my God, I've got to now think about how do I audit my food waste? Wouldn't that potentially be a bit disgusting? That's maybe a little bit effortful. So it's in terms of a quality behavior, it's right up there. It didn't make our list of 3 because it's, at least there's a perception it's not an easy behavior. It takes a bit of, it takes a bit to get, to warm up to this idea, right? But a waste audit can also be quite simple, right? So essentially it could just be when, you have a little notepad in your kitchen in which you've got a table where you've got some of the common kind of food items written on the top of each column. And then whenever you throw out that bit, you just tick it on the notepad, right? And you do that for a week, just to get a sense from that, how much food you wasted over a week. So essentially it's like keeping a bit of a kitchen diary as to how much food you're wasting. I'm not saying, look, the proper way to do it is to jump in your bin and have a rummage around, right? But that's going to be out of most people's kind of comfort zone.
I think so.
The less kind of icky way of doing it is even do it on your phone, right? Is have a little notepad on your phone and you've just note down whenever you've thrown something out for the space of a week. And at the end of the week, have a look. What are you throwing out most frequently? How much of that is what you're throwing out? And then based on those, what goals can you set to reduce particular items that you're finding you're wasting a lot of?
Okay. And I guess for anyone out there who does decide to do a food audit via their phone, and they come to the end of the week and they see that maybe the most wasted food is bread, for example. They don't have to stop wasting everything at the end of that week, but they can just focus on bread and say, okay, this week I'm going to tackle bread. I'm not going to waste as much bread.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And then it's small incremental changes we can make. And I guess then by 2030, which is that's the big year, that's the buzzword.
Yes.
We can halve our food waste.
Yeah, and certainly, we can play our part in halving that. And again, as we've talked about a few times, when you throw out that third of bit of bread that's gone stale in your pantry, in and of itself, that looks really tiny. But as you said, multiply it across millions, and you're starting to get quite a substantial issue here. So it is the food waste, it is those small actions that we do every day, which accumulates. And actually then, if we try to tackle those, we'll go to halving food waste by 2030.
So now that you've heard from industry professionals and research experts, let's have a look at what you can do to reduce your food waste.
Consumer food wastage starts at the supermarket, where unnecessary bulk buying, overemphasis on the aesthetics of fruit or vegetables, and a lack of a weekly meal plan sets consumers up for failure, as by the time they leave the supermarket with their bags full, they're already one step closer to contributing to food waste. To shine a light on this, I'll take you through a food waste conscious trip to the grocers and show you some of the ways that you can have a positive impact on this issue. However, before we even get to the store, let's look at a simple habit that you can get into in order to avoid food waste before you even leave the house, which can not only reduce your wastage but also save you time and money. This habit, of course, is by creating a list of what you need to buy, whether it be for a single meal or for a week's worth of eating. By creating a list, you go into the store knowing exactly what you need, reducing the likelihood of not only spending unnecessary time and money on items you impulse buy, but by also reducing the likelihood that these additional items will end up in the bin. Now that we've got our list, let's grab our other essentials and make our way to the shops, where I'll show you how some more small changes to your shopping habits can have a great impact on the fight against food waste. We're here. Let's start off by looking at a way of reducing food waste that many of you probably haven't even thought about. It's by avoiding the allure of sales, which can promote unnecessary purchases of bulk products such as larger quantities of meat or other perishable items. I know it may seem like sales save you money, but if you see a sale on strawberries that is 3 punnets for $5 rather than 1 for $2, unless you eat all 3 punnets, you're not only spending unnecessary money on items you won't consume, but you're also throwing food away that could have been consumed by somebody else. This links back to the importance of list making, as if you go in with an exact list of quantities needed, you can further rationalise your decision not to succumb to the pressure of sales. I'm not saying to avoid bargains if you know you'll eat the larger quantity of food. However, if you're only buying it because you think the deal is too good to pass up on, you may end up throwing the extra items in the bin. So next time you see a sale and think the extra money is worth it, take a few seconds to question if you would actually buy the product if the deal didn't exist. As at the end of the day, you're still spending money, and may end up contributing to food waste at the same time. Not all items in the produce aisle look the same. You've got round ones, long ones, small ones, big ones, and a wealth of other shapes in between. The same can be said for fruits and veg of the same type, which is another area where consumer habits can lead to food wastage. Take capsicums for example. I always look for the brightest red with the least amount of blemishes that I can find. However, this is an extremely flawed way of thinking, as in the end, unless there is mould or significant insect activity, a discoloured or blemished capsicum tastes just as good and is full of the same nutrients as one that is more visually pleasing. So next time you go to the fresh food section, try being less concerned about the aesthetics of the produce, and instead realise that even though they may look different, they're all the same. On a similar token, use by dates are another aspect where a bit of initiative can go a long way to ensure that food is eaten rather than wasted. For example, if you're making a chicken dish on the night of your shop, maybe try and find a packet that is closer to expiry rather than one that will expire in a week's time, as you know it's going to be used on the day that you buy it, and it prevents the store from having to throw it out if it doesn't get bought by somebody else. These small changes to your shopping habits require only a bit of thoughtfulness, and can not only save you money, but can more importantly reduce your impact on the level of food waste in Victoria.
Sustainability Victoria found that among the foods with the highest impact, 6 foods required immediate focus. 2 of those being bread and tomatoes. For every loaf of bread we eat, half is thrown away. For every kilo of tomatoes eaten, there is almost 750 grams of waste. I'm going to be showing you 2 recipes I found on the internet that will help me use up those last few pieces of stale bread from the loaf and the excess number of cherry tomatoes I have remaining from that bargain I got. I'll also be putting together a quick and easy dessert using some bananas that I had that were beginning to soften. Let's get started. We're going to be making a pasta bake. You'll need cherry tomatoes, minced garlic, olive oil, balsamic vinegar, basil, oregano, salt and pepper, stale bread, Parmesan cheese, and pasta. Preheat your oven to 200 degrees Celsius. Halve the cherry tomatoes. After you've cut a few, remember there is a more efficient method. Add the tomatoes, garlic, oil, vinegar, basil, oregano and seasoning to a roasting tin and mix to combine. Roast for 20 minutes or until the tomatoes are breaking down into a sauce. Meanwhile, use a food processor to whiz the parmesan and stale bread into cheesy breadcrumbs. In a large pot of boiling salted water, cook pasta until tender but firm. And once the tomatoes are ready, add the pasta to the roasting tray. Stir to combine the pasta with the tomato mixture so that everything is combined. Top the pasta mixture with cheesy breadcrumbs and return to the oven to bake for 10 to 15 minutes until you have a golden crumb. With that completed, let's have a go at the peanut butter and banana ice cream. For this recipe, you'll need bananas, condensed milk, chunky peanut butter, and chocolate, which is optional. Peel and chop bananas into 1 cm discs and pop into a bag or plastic airtight boxes to freeze. Here are some I prepared earlier. Add the slices of frozen banana, condensed milk and peanut butter to a food processor and blend until you have a smooth mixture. If it needs loosening, you can add milk. Transfer the mixture to a freezer-proof dish and freeze until hard. Both of these recipes and more can be found at the Love Food Hate Waste website.
Hi, I'm Liam, and today I'll be showing you how important the process of storage is in combating food waste. Although you might plan for a shop and cook the right amounts of food, that's a good start. However, there's usually leftovers or more meals for the week that need to be stored and eventually eaten. So please, allow me to reintroduce you to your old friends, the pantry, the fridge, and the freezer. Your pantry is great for long life items, but usually fills up pretty quickly. Some dry goods have a longer shelf life than others and don't go off as easily. However, there are still tips involved with storing these items that can help prevent wastage. Simple steps such as keeping like items stored together can prevent any ingredients from being overlooked and not used. This can also assist when making any shopping lists and preparing to cook, ensuring items aren't unnecessarily bought when another packet is already there, and that items don't accumulate in the back of the pantry. Collecting empty jars can also serve as a good way of keeping any ingredients that have been opened and need to be properly sealed. Even if there's a small amount left in the box or bag, keeping them contained can ensure that they will be usable when you find a suitable recipe to finish off the last bit. For many households, the fridge tends to be the central hub for food and would-be meals. So how can we minimize food waste in this section? Well, despite me and many other university students alike's fridges being filled with mainly alcohol and condiments, there are still many tips that we can use to make this an efficient and waste-free space. Although it might seem quite obvious at first, using your fridge properly will prolong the shelf life of our fruits, vegetables, and leftovers. Drawers and compartments in fridges are designed to keep food fresher for longer and should be used accordingly. As mentioned by our guest interviewers, the most impactful change that people should make in their own fridge is to have a use it up space. This is a dedicated section or drawer that is clearly visible and accessible, containing any items that must be eaten soon. OzHarvest currently have a special tape available to highlight this zone as a part of their Use It Up campaign. However, since it was launched just last week, I've had to settle for masking tape in the meantime. Lastly, the freezer. The freezer is the best way to keep food fresh and usable for long past its expiry date. It can be used on just about anything and can save leftovers and future meals easily. As previously mentioned, the freezer is essentially a pause button and can eliminate any unnecessary waste. A prime example of prolonging an item's shelf life is for one of the most wasted foods, bread. Whether it is half a loaf, rolls, or breadcrumbs, the freezer can prevent them from going off and have them ready for their next use. Keeping an organized freezer is a great way of clearly showing everything that is available to cook and use. By neatly arranging stored items and not overfilling, it also allows for proper cold air circulation and keeps every item at the appropriate temperature. The last tip to keep a well-organized freezer as well as fridge and pantry is to label everything. To be able to see what something is at a glance is great for quickly planning meals or finding recipes that can use the last of an item. Putting the date that the food was made on is also an efficient way to know what should be eaten sooner rather than later. Thanks for joining me, everyone. I hope that you can implement some of these storage tips into your own household and help combat food waste. Just try not to leave the fridge or freezer door open for as long as I did. Thanks.
So even if you try really hard to eat everything you buy, you're still probably going to end up with some food scraps. These can be things that you don't really want to eat, like these lemon peels or this knobbly bit of a capsicum. Not very appetizing. And you might also end up with some embarrassing things like this carrot that I never got around to eating. Yep, that used to be a carrot. So what I do to keep all of this out of landfill is I just collect it in a container, as you can see. And when the container gets full, I compost it. Composting should really be a last resort for the edible parts of a food because we really want to make the most of all the energy and resources that went into growing that food and then getting it into our homes. And the way we make the most out of that is by eating it. However, for things like pips, stalks, and skins that we don't want to eat, composting is probably the best place for it to end up. Traditional compost bins can go straight on the dirt in your backyard or veggie patch. And you can even get freestanding rotating ones like you can see Owen using here. But what if you live in an apartment and don't have a backyard, like me? I use a makeshift compost bin that I have on my balcony. It's just a normal plastic container that I cut some holes in the bottom of to let it drain and breathe. And I just put my food scraps in there with some shredded pizza box to balance out the chemical makeup of the compost, and that's it. It just biodegrades in there.
If composting at home isn't your thing, some councils have set up public food collection places, like this one.
Wow, that is a lot of information to process. And if you're feeling a little overwhelmed right now, don't worry. We know how you feel. But armed with the tools and the strategies that you've seen throughout this documentary, you have an opportunity to take part in the fight against food waste. You can use it up with OzHarvest. You can support Victoria on the path to half by 2030. You can reduce the damage that food waste is doing to our economy and the environment around us. And it can all start in your kitchen. So good luck out there. And thanks for watching.